Welcome to my video series of Autodesk Fusion 360 tutorials. I've been doing CAD work for a lot of years, over 10 years, across different Autodesk platforms like AutoCAD Civil 3D, Autodesk Inventor, straight vanilla AutoCAD. But with my 3D printing hobby, I've been using Fusion 360 as my primary CAD tool. Or CAD software, I guess you could say. It's still a tool though. So in this video I am going to share some of the different functions of all the buttons and menus that you see around here. Now, as I do these videos, while I do have quite a bit of experience using Fusion 360, there are some things that I don't use so much. So some of these points we might be learning together. But that's what teaching is all about sometimes, sharing the experience. So let's start up here at the very top. See all these buttons up here. You see your file button, your save, undo, redo, just like playing with a text editor or word processor. It works the same way here in Fusion 360. There's this other button here, show data panel. Now the data panel shows the projects and individual modeling files, drawing files that you've been working on. And these are all actually stored on the Autodesk cloud. So to download this software you need to make a free account with Autodesk, and everything you make with Fusion 360 will be stored on the Autodesk cloud. Nothing is really stored locally on your computer unless you take screenshots or print PDFs of your drawings or save PDFs of your drawings. So, but as you navigate the data panel, it's just like navigating files in your computer. You have a home directory, you have folders with files in them, you can have folders in your folders, and so on. But most of the time I keep this data panel closed to expand my modeling space. But I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to work my way over here. So with a free Autodesk subscription, Fusion 360 subscription, not being just the free, this is the free personal use one that you can get. But with that you have a limit of 10 documents that you can have editable at any given time. Now this has never been a problem for me. As maybe if you're a company that has to do a lot of CAD work, it could be an issue. But I think for most enthusiasts, hobbyists, other users that aren't making a big buck using this software, I think this is perfectly fine. And if you click on this, it'll bring up a list over here of all of your editable files. There's some other stuff here relating to automatic software updates, and if you click your portrait here you can access some of your settings for Fusion 360. Now working our way down here, this big white space here, it's your modeling space. There's nothing there now because I don't have a model or a sketch, but when there is, it'll be right here. And you can pan the view, zoom in, zoom out, orbit, and all that can be controlled with your mouse, combination of mouse, keyboard. You can all set that in your program options. And you can also control it with this view cube, which I'm not really going to mess with right now because it's kind of hard to adjust the view when you don't have anything to look at. Over here, speaking of things to look at, this is a project browser. So anything you do with your project, creating sketches, bodies, construction planes, and so on, will appear over here. And of course, like I said, we don't have anything made here yet, so this list here is pretty sparse. But one of the things that you can do before you make a model is you could play around with your document settings. So why don't we see what settings there are here. I see there are units. If I click on this gear here, okay, nothing else is coming up. So I guess the only setting you have right now is changing your units. And if you want to change your active units, just click on that. Over here, a window pops up. What unit type do you want? So you have a few metric units and a couple English units. I personally prefer to work with millimeters and centimeters, actually mostly centimeters. Um, Numbers are just easier to work out in my head, despite using English units all my life. But hey, yeah, there's something to metric after all, I think. Yeah, there's other things here, named views, which actually correspond to your view cube over here. This is not something I usually mess with, but it looks like you can create some custom views here. And you have an origin designation. This is probably something, again, this is another thing I don't usually play with, but it looks like you can actually see where your origin is. Like, I highlight each of these, shows your x-axis, your y-axis, z-axis, and different planes. You have your xy plane, your xz plane, and your yz plane. And those actually they somewhat correspond with your regular views. Like your top here is xy, your front is your xz, and your right is yz. And you can change all that. You can change your default views and everything. Working our way down, there's this little comments section. This is actually connected to the browser here. If I retract the browser, it makes your browser and comments more compact, so you can have more model space to work with. But in this comments section, there are comments. So anytime you save a file, it gives you a little opportunity to add notes describing what you did, kind of like a change log. And I believe this is not something I do very much with this, because I actually write it on a notepad on my desk. So it's something you can do, and maybe we can play with that as we model later on. So I'll minimize that. Here are some other viewing tools down here at the bottom of your modeling space. So in case you didn't want to use your keyboard shortcuts or your mouse, you can click on orbit, then just left click and drag to orbit. If you have a model and you want to look at specific facing, you click on this, then click on a face of the model, pan, zoom. Yeah, this just allows you to left click and do whatever you have selected down here. Display settings, these are all different things to, I guess, make the display suited to how you want it. This is not something I really mess around with a whole lot, but these settings exist. Play around with these to make it comfortable for you. After all, this is your CAD experience. Same here, have a layout grid. What happens if I click on that? Oh, then you always have a grid showing up. But I'll turn that back off. Now with the grid, you can snap to the grid. There's other grid settings here you can play with. It's not stuff I usually mess with a whole lot. But going through these, I might now. So going down to the very bottom here, this bit here that kind of looks like play buttons on a cassette player, CD player. Does anyone still listen to cassettes? So this is a timeline. So as you're making sketches or building models, editing them, all those actions will be recorded down here, and you can go forward or back in your timeline to specific steps. You can do it with this slider here, which isn't going to slide right now because there's nothing here. It can be an interesting tool to help you try to figure out what to do with your design. Then over here, there's this little gear. It's apparently, this is not something I've actually ever touched over here, but apparently you can set it so that you don't capture your design history, so your timeline won't be capturing anything you're doing. I almost forgot. We have all these tools up here. These are all modeling tools. So usually models start off with a sketch, then after you have a sketch it'll show up here as a shape, then you can extrude it to make it from a 2D object to a 3D object, with all these other things: extrude, revolve, make holes. Then once you do have a 3D object, you can modify it by pushing or pulling edges, doing fillets or chamfers, hollowing it out to make a shell. If you have multiple bodies, you can combine them. If you want multiple bodies, you can split them. There's all sorts of really neat things here. For making assemblies, like right now I'm working on a project making front wheels for a dog that has no front legs. I am making a wheelchair that has multiple components I need to assemble. There's these planes. I made a passing mention of construction planes. These help you make sketches with respect to different bodies that you have out here, different 3D models that you have out here, so you can keep making different things. I use the inspect tool a lot to help measure diameters and distances so I can get my clearances right when I'm making stuff. Yeah, if you click on this, there's all sorts of different things to help you figure out, is my model going to work in reality? Yeah, there's a lot of neat tools here. Section analysis is also really nice. Allows you to actually look inside your part. There's some really neat things. There's this insert button here where you could insert a drawing if you want to, and just use CAD to trace a drawing. Insert a mesh, although I don't really recommend inserting meshes because Fusion 360 isn't really optimized for handling meshes. It'll really slow down if you don't have a really good system. Like I like to think my computer's pretty good, but it bogs down with meshes a lot. So I don't really do that. If you're familiar with McMaster-Carr, they supply a lot of components or whatever you might need for your projects. There are some products on McMaster-Carr's website where there are actual CAD drawings that you can import into Fusion 360 and work on those, or use them as part of your project. SVGs, that's a way to make a picture into an editable sketch. That could be useful for certain things. You have to use a special SVG editor. Well, not special. You can find open source versions of SVG editors. So yeah, and then of course there's your select tools, which that can get interesting too. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons below. And remember, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. So keep learning, keep designing, keep making, and be proud of your work.